Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Varun with UCAN, and today we are thrilled to be joined by a very high-level athlete. We've got Emily Rolfe, CrossFit athlete, 18th at the CrossFit Games last year. Emily, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Emily. Well, we are going to dive into the secrets of peak performance with you. Like I mentioned, you've done some pretty amazing things in CrossFit, and we want to know what makes you tick. Dive into your training, dive into your nutrition, get some takeaways that all of us who are aspiring to be fit, improve our performance. You know, there's some things that we can learn from you. You might not be able to do it at your level, but definitely some takeaways that we want to dive into today. So we're going to do that, but before we get started, let's learn a little bit about you and let our audience get to know you a little bit. I'm going to ask you a few questions just so we can learn who Emily is. You have an interesting background, like I mentioned, really high-level CrossFit athlete. You also have a full-time job in radiology. So let's start right there. How do those two go hand in hand, and where does your interest in each path come from?
So I don't know if they really go together, but I enjoy both. So that's where we are right now. Probably started competing professionally CrossFit in 2019. So that part's relatively new. And then I worked as a radiographer since 2015. So that was kind of my career until CrossFit took off. And then last year I was kind of like, oh, should I just become full-time athlete? Should I still work? And then the world blew up. So now I'm kind of glad I'm still working. And for now, we're making them both work together.
So we're going to talk a lot about CrossFit and what goes into that. So before we dive into that, let's talk about your other career, if you will. Where did, your career in radiology, where in the medical field, where did that get started? What took you down that path and had you interested in that?
I think I knew I always wanted to work in the medical field in some way or another. Originally, I was planning to go to med or physio or even pharmacy, but those just didn't pan out. And I found myself doing X-ray, and it was kind of a career that I could do while I was still training in gymnastics. So when I started, it worked out well together, whereas had I gone to med school or something, I would have had to just focus on that. And I was still kind of a student athlete, so it was a way I could do both.
So speaking of your path to becoming a CrossFit athlete, you just alluded to being a student athlete and gymnastics as well. So was that where your background was in terms of strength type athletics? Kind of take us through your journey as an athlete.
Yeah, so growing up, I had an older brother. I chased him, played all the sports, probably focused on gymnastics from, I would say, pretty young, maybe 10. Started training 5-6 days a week, 25 hours a week. Like that's all I did. And that carried on. I competed nationally for 6 years and did gymnastics throughout my undergrad science degree. So I was able to still live at home and train and complete my undergrad, which was great to do both at the same time. I was lucky.
What's the relationship between kind of that foundation of fitness you built, competing in gymnastics, as that transferred into competing in CrossFit? How did you develop that interest in CrossFit, and how do you feel like those two went hand in hand?
Yeah, 100% they go. A lot of high-level CrossFitters you'll find were ex-gymnasts. And I don't know if it's because we're used to the individual sport or it's the drive or body awareness. I'm not sure, but yeah, it kind of filled the void. When I stopped competing in gymnastics, I'm used to training 5 hours a day, and now what am I doing with myself kind of thing. So, enter CrossFit and pretty much the same thing. And you can tell, like, anyone who's ever tried CrossFit knows there's so many skills to learn. Like, you could spend hours at the gym just perfecting one thing. You're trying to be a good weightlifter, you're trying to do good gymnastic skills, you're trying to be a good runner, a good rower. Like, there's so many things. So you can just so I was happy to spend hours at the gym and learn everything. It was pretty much just like I was doing gymnastics again.
From an individual sports standpoint, you kind of talked about the connection between the two, and
Mhm.
I guess in any individual sport, there's always that ability to compete against yourself. So there's that competition. But did you know when you entered CrossFit that, you wanted to compete against other people, or was it initially just something you were doing to keep yourself fit, or was it something that you entered saying, I want to enter the competitions and be competitive and see what I can do?
Yeah, I think maybe the first day I just thought, oh, it'll be a good fitness thing to do. Um, and then I think one class later, people were like, yeah, you can compete. And I saw it on TV, I saw the games, and I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do that.
You being at the games, like how does that stage compare to competitions? You were a gymnast collegiately, right? So you competed, I'm sure in front of crowds and at different events. Like, how did being on that CrossFit game stage for that first time compare to any other type of competition you'd been involved with?
I would say it was better. It was just more, yeah, just I would say it was more magical. Like, I don't want to be cliche, but just like walking into the stadium and everyone's kind of cheering for you. Whereas gymnastics, I didn't compete on a team. Like, I know a lot of colleges in the US, they're very team oriented, but um, I just competed individually for my country. It's not like collegiate's not as big here. So um, it's more kind of every man for themselves, and it's not a big, not as like a community feel like CrossFit is. Like, I just felt like everyone was cheering for me, and people who don't even know me were rooting for me, which is really cool.
And you talked about competing for your country. I haven't even spilled the beans that Emily is joining us from Canada. So Emily, tell us a little bit about where you're from and where you're joining us from right now.
Yeah, Vancouver, Canada, way over on the west side.
Amazing. It's one of the beautiful cities in North America. Lived out on the West Coast in the Bay Area for a little bit and had a chance to make my way up to Vancouver. So it's a wonderful place, and I'm sure. Is
Yeah,
that where you?
when
Is that where
it's not
you?
raining, it is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. When it's not raining.
Is that where you grew up? Did you grow up in that area, or is that where you've been training more recently?
Um, no, it's where I've been training. I grew up in a small town. It's probably about a 4-hour drive, more of a ski town. So I lived there till I was about 24, and then
Nice.
moved to Vancouver. Yeah.
Well, awesome, Emily. Well, the purpose of today's discussion is to give everyone who's listening an inside look and watching at how Emily achieves peak performance and to have some takeaways that we can all apply to our own pursuits. We're going to focus on training, nutrition, and mindset. And this conversation is brought to you by UCAN. UCAN delivers long-lasting energy with no spike and crash. And we're going to ask Emily a little bit about how she feels with UCAN coming up in just a bit. But Emily, let's start with your training. So, CrossFit is a very impressive sport. The athletes competing in it, they call the people that win the CrossFit Games the fittest man or the fittest woman in the world. There's a reason for that. So to compete, on that stage and be top 20 in the world like you were last year, sure requires just an amount of training that we might not even be able to comprehend. What does a typical day of training look like for you?
Yeah. So usually train twice a day. Probably about 4 days a week, I'm training twice a day, and then the other days once a day. If it's a single training session, it's usually about 3 hours. Usually a bit of everything, some intervals, some like Metcons, we call them, like classic CrossFit workouts. And then if it's a two time a day training, my first session will be a lot more strength orientated. So I'll be doing heavy back squats, heavy deadlifts, like shoulder presses, almost more like bodybuilding stuff. But that's just because that's what I need to work on. I'm sure some of the other girls I compete with, they do the first session just conditioning because that's what they need to work on, but it's kind of tailored to what I need. And then the second session is going to be more classic CrossFit again, which will be another 2.5 to 3 hours usually. So about 4 to 5 hours a day. Yeah, if I'm working, that's when it gets to be a long day. If I'm on a day shift, like an 8 to 4 shift, I'll do my first session early in the morning, 5:30 a.m., get up and go. And then the second session, of course, at 4 p.m. And then if I'm working like an evening shift, I'll have to fit in both sessions before I go to work, which is, I mean, it has its pros and cons. I can sleep in a little bit, but then the sessions are a lot closer together. Like I'm only recovering for a couple hours in between. Whereas the day shift kind of gives me that 8 hours that I'm at work that I'm kind of recovering between sessions. So that's also good. Just means I have to get up earlier.
What's the ideal time? Like, when are you feeling your best? Where you're like, if this was all I was doing, this is when I'd want to train during the day.
You know what? Like, I think about that because some of the girls I compete with, I'm like, man, after first session, I could just go home and use my massage tool and eat and like just chill out a bit, maybe have a nap. On my days off, I do that. But you know what? Like, I also think getting out of the gym, I know a lot of people coach in between, and I kind of like getting out of the gym, doing a totally different thing, being with a totally different group of people. And yeah, that kind of fulfills me in a different way. So for now, I'm kind of enjoying doing both.
For people that might not know exactly all the inner workings of CrossFit, we talked about it being an individual sport. Like, who is your team? Do you have a coach that's writing your workouts? Like, what does the support system in terms of your training look like?
So yeah, I have a coach who is also my husband. So that comes with its difficulties too, but for the most part, we work really well together. And yeah, he's great because he knows me better than anyone else. He knows what I'm eating. He knows how I'm sleeping, like the other things that you don't think about, not just the training. He knows all that. So really, I think it's the best thing if you can work together, to have someone like that coach you is pretty good.
Do you guys meet through CrossFit or know each other outside of CrossFit?
No, we knew each other before I started CrossFit, but we did meet in a gym.
There you go. So it's just natural that that you guys are a team in the in CrossFit as well.
Yeah, true.
So you spoke a little bit about balancing training with a full-time job. I guess to dive into that a little bit more, like, do you feel like it helps you in any way? I'm sure there's parts of it where those days, like you talked about, they're long days. Does it help you? Does it help you stay sharp in any way?
I think for sure. I think, like what I said before, just the mental break of getting out of the gym, that's really good. And then obviously I have to be super disciplined and efficient, like with my rest periods, with everything, because I got to be out of here in an hour to get to work. Like, I don't have all day. So I think that helps. Like, the intensity is definitely there because I just don't have the time to fiddle around. Yeah. And I think it forces me to have a break. Like, again, I'm working for 8 hours. I'm walking around, but that's about it. So yeah, it's a good break.
The training, you talked about the variety of activities in CrossFit, the running, the rowing, the strength work, the bodybuilding type of work. What do you enjoy the most, or where do you feel, maybe I should start with it could be the same answer, but where do you feel like you excel the most, in terms of the diverse set of skills that a CrossFit athlete has to master?
So definitely the conditioning. I remember when I first started CrossFit, like, the coaches at the gym were telling me, like, you have a world-class engine. Like, you can just go and go and go like a machine, like, doesn't stop. And I was like, oh, okay, well. And then I did my first like online kind of worldwide, and I placed really well in like a machine style kind of workout. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I am good at that. And yeah, then I win the ruck run at the games. So anything.
Tell us what the ruck run is. For those that don't know it, it's a crazy event. What's it all about?
Yeah, so Go Ruck sponsored it. The ruck is like a backpack, I guess. We didn't know till an hour before we did it what the workout was going to be. I think it was 6K run, and then every kilometer and a half you had to add weight to your backpack. So you started with 20 pounds, and then 30, 40, 50, and then you do a kilometer and a half lap. And yeah, I thought maybe top 5. Like I knew I would be good because I've always been a good runner, but yeah, I ended up winning.
It's amazing. What is it? Can you describe what it's like running with 50 pounds on your back for a sustained distance?
Yeah, you know what? I was so like dialed in that I remember telling my mom after, it did not feel like I was adding weight at all. Like you take off your backpack, put it in the sandbag, like sling it back over and go. And I never once, when I put on my backpack, I wasn't like, oh, this is so much heavier. Like felt the exact same. I don't know if I was just so zoned in, or at that point you can't, like you either let it crush you or you run with it, right? Like no choice.
That's seriously, that's it's survival. It's survival. That's like the way you're describing it. It really is. Um, when you were talking about your husband being your coach, kind of knowing like if you slept well, if your nutrition's on and off, kind of being able to gauge how you're feeling. How do you know when to push it and when to back off in training? And is that a struggle? Is that a decision you're able to make yourself, or is that something that you have to rely on a coach sometimes to help you know that?
I would like to say I've matured a lot in this area. um, I would say I need my coach to tell me like, no, you've done enough. Like if I used to think like, oh, if I don't leave training like totally exhausted and just like destroyed, then like, did I work hard enough? Did I do enough? Like I've always been the kid to like go, go, go and just hammer myself to the ground. And I'm learning now that more is not always better. And you need to recover. Like you're not going to get stronger or better if you're not recovering from the hard training that you're doing. So yeah, gradually I'm getting better at recovery and resting. And yeah, Kyle helps me out a lot with that. He'll like, first thing he asks me, like, how did you sleep? How many hours did you sleep? Like, what was your score? Because obviously sleep quality is a big thing too, not just the hours. And he'll kind of, okay, like if I slept really bad or like something, he'll kind of be like, okay, maybe we're not going to push the percentages today, or maybe he's going to take out the second workout, or he kind of adapts it.
So sleep, and sleep and recovery, they're huge components of training. And, I think something that a lot of athletes are really focusing on, and there's a lot of great research. People are learning more and more about all the various things, right, that can impact recovery. And I know there's so much that, is being talked about sleep in the last several years. You mentioned the score. Tell us a little bit about that. Are you tracking your sleep, and what are some of the metrics when you're coming up with that sleep score that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I recently in the last year started tracking my sleep. You can like any sort of wrist device, like there's a million of them out there that you can use. But yeah, it's really interesting. I used to think, oh, like I went to bed at 10, pretty sure I fell asleep right away, woke up at 8, like 10 hours, boom. But really, no, I'm finding you weren't asleep that long. Like you woke up 10 times during the night and you were tossing and turning. And so, yeah, it's not just the hours. And yeah, the quality is really important because deep sleep, that's when your body regenerates and recovers. So if I've done a really hard session and I get half an hour of deep sleep, like no wonder I'm feeling trashed the next day, like super important. So yeah, I'm finding that really helpful actually, as long as you're not don't let it get in your psyche too much, because if you have to compete on Saturday and you slept bad on Friday and you're like, oh no, like you have, again, no choice. Like
Right.
you can't let that get to you. So it's good for training. I probably will not wear it like the night before a competition, because at that point you just got to go anyways, but it's good for now.
It's amazing, the technology and the data that's available to all of us. And, whether you're a high level athlete or just, trying to get more fit, it's like you have incredible amounts of data with different devices available to you. How much of a data junkie are you? Like you talked a little bit just there about not being obsessive, but you still do rely on the data, kind of throughout training. So yeah, how much are you looking at data in various elements of your training?
Well, yeah, for that, like I say I do, but really if my program says 95%, I'm going to try to hit it. Like, and then if I don't and I get up all upset, Kyle will be like, well, look, like maybe this is why, like you're crashed. It's the end of the week. Like,
Right.
oh, okay.
So it kind of helps you in that instance. It helps you understand what's happening, right? Instead of like, it's not necessarily maybe impacting like the action you take, but you're able to, it's as you evaluate, you know, the quality of a workout or what happened in a certain session, it's just giving you more understanding of why something might have
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. And I know some people totally base their training off that. Like if you wake up and your watch says, oh, you're in the red zone, like you're not recovered, they say, okay, I'll take a rest day. You know, next day you're green. Okay, good to go. But maybe that's great. I can't train like that. One, because of my work schedule, and two, just I guess I'm too OCD for that. Like I could not, I gotta have my training days set.
I want to move on to nutrition, but before we do, I just want to ask you one more thing about recovery. Any one or two things that are kind of like your things when it comes to recovery? Like, hey, these are a couple things that have made a huge difference that I really make sure I get in after a tough day of training.
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything I've that have made a huge difference, but things I always do and make sure I always do after a day of training would be number one, food. Protein and carbs, specifically carbs. So UCAN right away after training. That's a big one. And then basically sleep, physio every week, massage, supplements, make sure I'm getting my fish oil, magnesium, that sort of thing. But yeah, number one, food. Refuel.
Yeah, that's a great segue into talking about nutrition. But I think something you just said is so key. It's like you're not doing anything. It's not like about anything like really complex or magical that you're doing. It's just about the stuff that you're always doing after every workout, right? And just being consistent with that sleep and that nutrition over and over again. And that's a great point, because I think a lot of times people are looking for like the next magical thing, but you know, somebody like at your level, it's really oftentimes we hear this time and time again, whether we're talking to elite marathon runners or triathletes, it's like what makes these athletes great is just doing the right thing all the time, or the bulk of the time.
Yeah, sure.
So moving into nutrition, Emily, you talked about like refueling, how important that is as a component of recovery. Just from a general nutrition standpoint, are there any core principles that you try to follow when it comes to your day-to-day nutrition?
Yeah, so I have a nutritionist who kind of lays everything out for me. So she tells me this is how many protein, this is how many carbs, this is how many fats you need to eat. It'll change depending on where in the season we are and how much I'm training and stuff like that. But mostly the assumption is it's not like eat whatever I want and make it fill my macros kind of deal. It's eating whole foods. One, if I didn't, I would be hungry. Like that just fills up your macros so fast if you're eating crappy foods. And two, I'm not going to train or feel good or perform well. So it's kind of a no-brainer. So basically mostly whole foods. Because I train so much, my carbs are so high. So that's when, you know what, probably can't eat that much sweet potato and oatmeal all day to fill up my carbs. So that's where, again, I'm drinking UCAN. One scoop is like 30 grams of carbs, perfect. Like, especially if I'm having a long session and I'm kind of hungry, but I know this next rowing interval is like kind of going to want to throw up. Like that's also really good time to have UCAN, because I don't want to be eating anything that's going to sit heavy in my stomach.
So, you talked about carbs and some of the things you mentioned, like sweet potatoes, oatmeal. You're definitely focusing on quality of carbs, right? You're trying to eat complex carbohydrates, low glycemic carbohydrates generally. And can you kind of speak to like that consideration? You need a lot of carbs. How are you? And you talked about superstarch, and UCAN, which also fits right into that bill in terms of you're getting 30 grams of carbohydrate, but it's not a sugar that's giving you this supercharged energy. It's the superstarch is a really slow burning complex carbohydrate that's giving you a consistent stream of energy. Is that something you're trying to kind of get from all the carb choices you make throughout the day?
Yeah, more or less. I like before I had before I tried UCAN, I tried supplements that would give you that huge spike and then the crash. Basically, same as eating candy. Like you're hyper for a bit and then you just ugh, like and like again, CrossFit, you can't like if you have a half an hour workout and it's 5 rounds, well, you're gonna do 3 and you're gonna hit a wall hard. And it's happened to me, like, and it's awful. Like you want to die, like, and there's nothing you can do because you can't stop the workout and go fuel up. Like
Right.
once you're in it, you're in it. So once that happens, then I think you get a little smarter about what you're fueling with.
You kind of talked right there about the challenges of fueling a CrossFit workout. Like it's so demanding, it's so intense. Do you have like kind of a aha moment that you realized, maybe before you had figured out your fueling that, to take this to the next level, like what I fuel with before these workouts or leading into these workouts is going to make a huge difference? Was there kind of an awakening for you, or has it always just been something that you've been trying to tweak and improve as you've gotten higher level?
No, so like I said, I it happened to me at one of my first competitions because my teammates had this whatever it was, energy booster or whatever, and yeah, crashed and burned really hard. And I thought, well, that's not usually like me. Like usually I can keep going, kind of thing. So yeah, I kind of looked into it further and figured I got to change something here.
The balance, when between working and working out and fueling, it's something that I think is kind of like a common thread for a lot of people, right? It's like I have to get in a morning workout. How should I fuel before I start my workday? Or I have to fuel later in the day. I still want to eat after the workout. Just kind of speak to how you address that and how does UCAN fit into that puzzle for you as well, both in terms of fueling those morning workouts and those end of day workouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I find like a day shift, take a normal day shift, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. I would say most people can relate to that. And you're going to work out at 6 a.m. before work.
Right.
I don't think anyone's hungry when they wake up at 5 or 5:30. Like that's not what you really feel like eating at that hour, especially when you know you're going to go work out. So that's perfect time for UCAN. Perfect. Like, and then I find after work, it's 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm kind of hungry. Like my body's like, where's my dinner? And then no, like I got to go to the gym and do a 2-3 hour session. So I find the UCAN plus the protein, like if I sip on that maybe half hour before I'm done work, the protein kind of satiates me and I can, get through the workout because I know, and most people are like this, you don't want to go home. You don't want to go home and eat because you're not going back out again. Like there's no way. Once you're home, like your family's there, you've eaten, like there's no way. So you got to have something so you can go straight and get it done. And yeah, protein's good for that because I always get hungry around that hour.
It's like that commitment. Once you get that UCAN in your system, you're not going to not work out, right? So it's that.
No, what a waste. You can't go home.
There it is. I want to, for the final part of our discussion, tap into the mindset of elite CrossFit athlete. But just one more thing on UCAN before we do that, Emily.
Sure.
How do you describe the feeling you get from it during a workout? To other training partners or people that you kind of talk to about your workout. Like, how would you describe what you feel from fueling with UCAN?
Good question.
This is what we always want to know. Let me tell you, we sit around and this is what we want to tap into from our athletes is like, what do they feel?
Yeah. How do you describe it? I haven't really had to describe it because most people are like, how did you keep going? And I'm like, oh, here, try this. So, what's your secret? Oh, try this. But yeah, to describe, I just feel like I don't hit that wall. And I know CrossFit, like it's so intense that your lactic is building up. So you are gonna, like a 5-round workout, you are gonna feel it round 3, whether you take UCAN or not. Like you're feeling it. But yeah, your body, it can help your body push through. That's for sure. So why would you not? Why would you not want to be better? Like,
I love that first thing you said. How did you keep going? It's UCAN. And I mean, that kind of speaks to it, right? You associated with that ability to just keep pushing. That's really cool. It's interesting. I like watching you work that out and describe that. Well, Emily, let's for the final component of this discussion, let's talk about mindset. I've read several interviews with you around the time after last year's CrossFit Games, and you spoke a lot about the mental game in the interviews and how much you felt like that helped you as an athlete. When did you kind of open up to like that's something that you need to focus on training too? It's not just about training your body.
Yeah, so after I made the games in 2019, I met this guy, just like weird turn of events, and turns out he's a performance coach, and he was kind of like, oh, I can help you. And I was kind of like, is this hocus pocus? I don't know. But I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a go kind of thing. I thought I was pretty mentally strong. I didn't, I don't have like breakdowns in competition or, I didn't think I really needed anything, but the more things he taught me, the more I was like, wow, yeah, this can really help. And I think it did, especially going into the games. I just like my whole mindset was changed. Yeah.
Is there anything, maybe one or two specifics you can share that like really blew your mind? Something that the way it was framed for you hadn't thought about it before, or even just like a tactic that you hadn't employed before that made a big difference?
Yeah. So one of the first things he had me do is write down every single thought that came in my head in a day. Just everything, every second that you thought of something, oh, write that down. And I thought, okay, that's kind of, but you don't realize how many thoughts just like flitting in and out of your head in a day. And you don't realize, apparently I'm not the only one, that a lot of them are negative. And I don't think you realize that till you write them all down and you realize, wow, like, and so we kind of worked with that, and then kind of just recognizing when a negative thought comes in and then kind of stopping it and replacing it with something positive. Sounds very like elementary, but kind of worked because taught me how to kind of control my mind and teach it what I wanted to say. And, like in a CrossFit workout, your body is going to, no, your mind is going to quit. Yeah, your mind quits before your body. I always get that confused. So yeah, your mind, right. If your mind quits, your body's going to quit.
Right.
But if your mind is like, no, you're finishing, your body will follow like 99% of the cases. Unless you're physically unable, which never happens because your mind quits first. So nobody ever figures that out. But yeah, so I think just working with him, it's not like I was able to just change everything right away. Like it's definitely a work in progress, and it's still like every day you got to practice it, or else you kind of lose it if you don't use it. But yeah, I was super dialed in going into the games, and yeah, felt good.
That was such a interesting example. We gotta get another secret out of you. So give us one more kind of interesting mental trick or exercise that you practice that you've learned from him. You don't want to give your competitors all your secrets, but this is what people are here for. They want to know how you do what you do.
I think visualization is a huge one too. I remember in gymnastics, it's more about like physically doing the routines and doing the numbers. And I remember my last year I was injured. I had this ankle injury, and I would do all the conditioning, I would do all the bars. But then when we went to beam and I couldn't do the skills, my coach would say, okay, go in that corner, sit, ice your ankle, and do 10 beam routines in your head. And I was kind of like, okay, well, that's not me doing it, but And I did that every day, just like 10 stuck beam routines, never fell off the beam in my head. And then I went to compete that year, never fell off the beam. And I was like, oh, maybe visualization, like maybe it works. So when Brett introduced me to it, I was kind of already like, okay, well, I've seen it work before. So it's a good thing to do for me, maybe the night before a competition. Because I know like I'm already getting the butterflies. It usually starts like a day or two before. So like breathing techniques, visualization, like I think if you want to win the race, like why would you not see yourself winning it first? Right. Like, what do you expect to go out and just do it and you've never done it? But if you see yourself do it, and if you do it in your head, then you can go do it. Like you've done it. So I just kind of use that and okay, like I've done it. Like I did it last night. And I don't know, it works for me.
Yeah, the interesting link between both the examples you gave, both kind of turning those negative thoughts into positive thoughts and the visualization is just positivity, right? And that just that power of positive thinking and having that mind frame that you can achieve things and, kind of putting yourself in that positive situation. So two great examples. And I think two things that everybody can certainly practice, in whatever respect that it applies to them with what they're competing in. So appreciate that, Emily. A couple more for you before we wrap this up. You alluded to this, and I think you come across as pretty even keel and calm. Where does the fire come from? Like, how do you have that? Yeah, where does that competitive drive to achieve what you've achieved come from?
I've always been competitive. And I think you kind of have to learn to thrive on the pressure rather than be intimidated by it. I think if you can use, again, like what I've been working on with my mental coach, like kind of use the pressure because it's going to be there. Like people are going to have expectations of you. Like there's going to be a lot of pressure. And if you can turn around and make it work for you, like it's huge. Rather than, like I say, be intimidated and like this person like wrote an article about me probably winning this event and oh no, what if I don't? Like that's not gonna work. So yeah, just finding out how to make that pressure work for you has been a big game changer for me.
Maybe a month or two ago, we had a conversation with Sarah Hall, a world-class marathoner who's also on Team UCAN, and she expressed such a similar sentiment to what you said, where she felt like her career really started thriving when she was able to let go of what other people said about her, other people's expectations, and kind of feed off of that instead of make it a negative thing. So really interesting to hear you kind of speak to the same idea, in a different sport, but still, very similar mentality.
Yeah, like if you can feed off that hype and like use it to get you hyped up, like it's huge.
Absolutely.
Like, not your whole life people are going to be like cheering for you and like Team Emily, so go for it when it happens.
So, to wrap up kind of the mental side of things, there's a lot of uncertainty right now for everybody, across the world. And for athletes, it's a particularly unique time too. I mean, it's unique time like for everyone, but in your line of work, it's very competition driven and event driven, and there's a lot of those things are in flux. What's ahead for you as best as you know from a competition standpoint, and how do you stay focused and stay engaged without really knowing what's next?
Yeah. So the CrossFit world, we have a competition, an online competition called the Open. So that starts in February. So we know that's going to happen because it's online. So basically everyone in the world can enter that, and then you kind of move on from that. The best of the best can keep going. So it's kind of cool that brings everyone together at the beginning. So
and
we know that
kind of in your own gym and reporting those results in like an official type of capacity.
Yeah. You have to video it and have a judge, and it's kind of cool for like the general person who goes to 1 hour CrossFit a week. Like he can compete against me, really. He can say, oh, my score was this in this workout and Emily did this. Like, it's kind of cool. Everyone's together in that. So that'll start in February. So we know that. But yeah, you're right. Everything else is kind of up in the air. But I just feel like we're going to compete at some point. Competitions are going to come back. So why not use this time to train hard? And like, the time to shine will be later. It's coming. It's hopefully sooner rather than later. But I think that's when you're going to see, okay, who used this off season and trained hard, and who, kind of slacked off and was like, oh, I'm not competing for a while. Like, I think that's going to show when we start competing again. So I want to be ready.
Yeah, I think those are such wise words. It's the best thing that we could all do with some of this downtime is just prepare and get ourselves ready for when the time comes. Like you said, it's going to come back. Things are going to come back. People are going to have an opportunity, to do what they love doing again. So why not be in the best position possible to excel at it when it does come back?
And like with the beauty in any sport really is you can't just turn it on a month out. Oh, there's a competition next month. Oh shoot. Okay. Now I'm going to work really hard. Like, no, it's the 6 months before that you were grinding that's going to count. So I like that part.
Well, you've given us a lot of great insight and tips on how to make that grind productive. So Emily, we really, really appreciate that. Thanks so much for spending time with us today, for having kind of a range of ideas to give people to apply to their own training, to their own life, to their own fitness. We really appreciate that. We just want to remind everybody that this session was presented by UCAN. UCAN delivers steady, long-lasting energy powered by super starch, a low glycemic complex carbohydrate that keeps you fueled without the spike and crash. And if you check out ucan.co/Emily, you'll get a little bit more about how Emily uses UCAN. You'll get to check out her favorite products. You'll get to fuel like Emily. And why wouldn't you want to do that after listening to this? Emily, any final words to take us out? Anything you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about? The floor is yours.
No, I think we're good. I think I would have liked to use your answer there for the spiel on UCAN, though.
Well, you know what, Emily, that's what I'm paid to do, is to make sure I know how to talk about UCAN. But we really appreciate your insight. It's so awesome to hear what athletes feel about it, why they're using it, how they're using it. So yeah, appreciate all the time today, and we will talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for the support. It was fun.
Awesome.